What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on a 2016 Land Rover LR4. Today on the LR4 behind me, we're going to be covering how to do an engine oil service. Today we're working with our Lurkamali oil change kit that we feature on the site. Comes with 8 liters of oil, a fresh OE Mala oil filter, which also includes an O-ring for the oil filter cap, as well as a drain plug. We recommend you do this service every 5,000 miles, 3,500 under heavy driving, and with the lifetime replacement guarantee, doing your oil change every 5,000 miles is a breeze. Now we know what we're working with, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this job, we need a couple of basic tools, starting with a 13 millimeter and 14 millimeter socket, as well as a 14 millimeter and 15 millimeter wrench. It doesn't hurt to have duplicates of them, depending on what your working situation is. We have a 3/8 ratchet, as well as a torque wrench, and a 90 millimeter oil filter cap for the oil filter. It's actually an 88.5. However, 90 millimeters is what we had on the shelf. It'll do the trick, as it's not going to be very tight, and we're not going to torque it down very tight, so it shouldn't strip any plastic threads. An extension's always nice to have, and a flashlight. Now we know what kind of tools we're working with. Let's get started on this DIY. All right, my good people, we are under the hood of the LR4. First things first is we're going to remove our beauty cover so we can access our oil filter and our oil fill cap. To get this one off, you're going to want to pull it towards you ever so slightly while you lift up. You'll see it has a couple grommets and 2 notches in the back that hold it into place. Set this to the side for now. From there, we're going to take some shop towels and we're going to just tuck them around where our oil filter goes so that when we crack it / pull it out, if we drip anything, it'll be caught by the towel. And while we're here, we're going to go ahead and just crack the cap a little bit so that it can breathe when we go to drain our oil out. Taking our CTA 259 tool with a small extension and our 3/8 ratchet. And give it one full turn. That should be all we need for now. That can stay there. And while we're up here, we'll crack open our oil fill cap as well. We're going to remove our fill cap that's on the driver's side of the engine. Just going to go ahead and twist that off and set it to the side. Now with that all situated, let's get underneath the Rover and continue this draining process. All right, my good people, we are under the Rover. We're going to start by removing the skid plate that's held on by 10 13 millimeter bolts. 4 of them have 2 15 millimeter nuts on either side of them. So gotta make sure we get those as well. For these, I'm going to counter hold with a 15. Just putting that wrench on there. Then I'll break it free. You can see I upgraded to a 1/2-inch ratchet. They have a serrated type of lock nut on them that make them a little bit tougher to come off. So you might want to get yourself some more leverage. Just one thing to note, the 2 very back ones are the longest bolts out of all of them. The rest are identical. I'm going to leave one on the back, I have one on the front, and now I can work on getting ready to brace this. You also have 2 spacing sleeves on the back that these long ones run through. All right, so we have our skid plate off, 10 13 millimeter bolts, only 2 15 millimeter nuts, just on the front 2 bolts. The back 2 are integrated into the subframe. Then you have your 2 long ones on the rear with spacers. Pretty straightforward, but just in case you mix them up. With our skid plate off, we now have access to the drain plug on the bottom of our oil pan. This is going to be a 13 millimeter for your drain plug. I'm just going to use a 3/8 ratchet with my socket to break that free. Once that's cracked free, we're just going to undo it by hand. I like to keep constant pressure on the plug as I back it out. That way, once I feel it's completely loose, I can just hopefully pull away without taking an oil bath. Also, due to the way this is going to exit, it's going to have a trajectory going forward a bit. So we're going to be ready to catch that as well. All right, my good people, it's been about 3 days. The oil finally stopped draining. We're going to go ahead and insert our new drain plug. Always starting by hand. Beautiful. Clean that up. Make sure we clean any overspray off our oil cooler as well. And then we can go ahead and torque that down to 23 Newton meters if you're going to torque it. Or you can just snug it up by hand, whichever you prefer. There it is. It's not a lot. It's just a rubber O-ring that you're crushing. Beautiful. Let's get this out of the way and work on putting our skid plate back on. With those all snugged up, all 10 bolts back in, and our two 15 millimeter nuts on the receiving end, we can go ahead and lower this down and start filling with oil. Now that we're back up top, we can go ahead and remove the rest of the old oil filter so we can install our new one. And just as a reminder, this is a 90 millimeter cap. The exact measurement is 88.5. So if you do find one that size, awesome. Take our cap off, or our tool. Slowly lift up on this. Not a drop, baby. We pull off our old filter. Straight up. While we have the cap in our hand, one thing I forgot to mention was a small pick or flathead screwdriver comes in handy to remove these O-ring seals. Grab your new one that comes with your oil filter. Mala's kind enough to include it. You're going to want to make sure you feed it all the way into the channel dedicated for that O-ring. So you don't want to leave it on the threads, but you don't want to place it past the channels as well. You can tell someone's been using probably a pipe wrench or some sort of big pliers to get this off in the past. We'll take our new filter, set it into place. There's a square in here. You can kind of get a rough idea of how this is going to go in. You can go in either way as long as you're on the flat side. The filter is also keyed, so it only goes in the right way. Press it down. Beautiful. This one you can take your towels out of the way. You can see it's pretty clean. Go ahead and slide the new one in. You can pre-fill a little bit if you'd like before installing the new filter. We're going to use our cap. And the cap itself, the oil filter cap itself, gives you the 25 Newton meter torque spec. So we'll go ahead and torque it down to 25 Newton meters. And then, there it is. Now with that all done, give it a final wipe down. And let's work on filling this up with some liquid moly goodness. A Rover takes 8 liters of oil, so we have our 8 liters from our kit. I'm using a European no-spill funnel without any attachments, and I'm just placing it in our fill hole. Another nice thing to remember about the liquid moly bottles is that they do come with a peelable sticker where you can write your interval change on it. We'll put our oil cap back on. Beautiful, baby. Last thing to do is put our beauty cover back on, so let me grab that. Let's slide our cover back on. making sure our little notches in the back slide on to those grommets. Boom, baby. Beautiful. And there you have it, my good people. Another DIY in the books. Overall, a pretty straightforward one, but definitely a rewarding one, as this is probably the one you're going to use the most on this good old LR4. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave them in the comment box below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.